Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emma Conlon, and I'm the marketing specialist here at Pannos Marketing. And joining me today, I have Paul Tonelli, who is our Senior Vice President and Chief Creative Officer, along with our Director of Web Services, Matt Larrabee, who will be discussing and digging into the true power of personalization in your website and how it is such a potent brand tool and driver of trust, loyalty, and growth. But before we dig into the discussion, I did want to see if you could both maybe share a little bit with our audience about yourselves and maybe some of your roles and experience here at Panos. Paul, if you maybe wanted to kick us off.
Sure, I'll kick it off. As Emma said, my name is Paul Tonelli. I'm the creative director here. I've been a creative director for a number of years. Here at Pannos, brand development, campaign development, and strategy are really a big part of what we do. We only work with financial institutions, community financial institutions. So focusing on the brands at that level is a really interesting task, and making sure that we're consistent across all the platforms is really one of our consistent themes. But we essentially, do everything in-house. So we're a pretty tight-knit team. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today.
Yeah, and I'm Matt Larrabee. I'm the Director of Web Services at Pannos. I've worked in marketing agencies for over 20 years, the last 15 at Pannos. So in that time, I've worked for a lot of national brands like Verizon, Siemens, a few large regional banks, Fifth Third Bank, Banco Popular. But the last 15 years or so, I've focused on strategy and web marketing for community banks. And in that time, I've been a part of over 250 website builds for financial institutions. Like Paul said, that's strictly who we deal with at Pannos. So we've learned a lot of lessons over the years in that, and excited to share some of our insights on personalization today.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much again for joining us. So to kind of jump right in, as I mentioned before, today we'll explore why personalization matters, what it looks like when it's done well, and how it benefits both your audience and your FI. So let's start with the audience side. So could you guys maybe speak a little bit to how expectations have changed in recent years?
You can start it off, Matt, if you like.
Yeah, sure. So, just think of your own life. Think of how you live on the web. Most of us shop on Amazon. A lot of us shop on Amazon. You're constantly seeing personalization on that. We might watch Netflix at night. They are personalizing all the recommendations and suggestions for you. You'll probably use Google search today and see some AI suggestions in the beginning. They use location for personalization, things like that. ChatGPT. Even I was talking to my wife about scratching posts for cats the other day, and then I saw ads for scratching posts for cats randomly a couple of days later. So really all aspects of our life are being personalized right now, and it's become part of our lives both on and off the web. I saw some data on this actually recently from McKinsey and Salesforce that said over 70% of customers expect companies to understand their unique needs, and 76% feel frustrated when institutions aren't personalized for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really an eye-opener. That's a huge amount of people right there.
Yeah, I think what's important today is, you can't feel like it's a transactional thing all the time, right? It needs to feel personal. And I think that's what, and it's not just the younger generation. I think it's everyone now. I'm certainly not, 25 years old, and the habits that I've formed and the expectations that I have are just like everyone else. As Matt said, think of your real life. It's important that if I'm searching for something, that I'm acknowledged with an understanding that you get me, and it's important for all of us.
Absolutely. In that same vein, mentioning that personalization isn't just a nice to have, it's a foundation to earning and maintaining trust. So going a little bit deeper into that, could you speak to maybe why personalization is so essential for brands, especially in the banking space?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I think with any brand, whether it's a bank brand or even a sneaker, you create a relationship. You go back to it because it's something that you want. It's not necessarily, you've been forced to do it. It's a choice. And when you make that commitment, the brand or that company on the other side, it's important that they're doing their part in that relationship. So that personalization means that there's something a little bit closer. We're getting closer. You want my loyalty, therefore you need to give me a little something. Like you need to understand me, so that it's a back and forth relationship. It's that important if brands want to survive today.
Like what Paul said, that like users expect you to understand them now. There's not that grace that they had in the past, where you could offer them things that they didn't want, or they had to go look for the things that they wanted on the website. They're really expecting you to understand them right up front. And even talking about AI, one big thing that we've seen in the marketing realm lately is just search engine results. How many people here are scrolling past the AI answer to look at the sites listed below it now? Like that percentage has dropped off so much recently.
Yeah.
It's just showing like customers are expecting like a level of personalization that has never been seen before. It's really not a want anymore. It's a need in all aspects of their life.
I mean, the fact that it's based off of your behavior, and what's important to you or where you're coming from, that data trail, as scary as it might be to some, it's important to almost everybody, whether they, deny it or not. I think pretty comfortable when you're being feeded back, data back to your, information back to you, or solutions back to you that are really relevant. They're actually helping you. It's quicker, it's more efficient. Life moves on a little bit more seamlessly with less friction.
Yeah, definitely at the onset of personalization, we saw a lot more friction with data collection and just institutions knowing more about the users. That made them uncomfortable. We're seeing that kind of move toward that's expected from users now. They're more comfortable with it. They're consenting to cookies being stored, that types of things, because they know the experience is going to be better. It's what they're expecting, what they're looking for now. So that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years, where there's a lot more hesitation when personalization first came out.
And in the banking vertical, it's where your money's at, right? It's a personal relationship. And I know it can seem cold, just the idea of what banks have always traditionally been, it's the brick and mortar, but trust is so necessary, and that relationship building is so necessary, that my unique relationship with my financial institution, and the fact that they're kind of working that hard to keep me close to them, makes it feel almost as if like it's my hometown team. It's like I'm committed and loyal to them because they're holding on to stuff that's really important to me.
So moving along, Paul, could you speak to why visual consistency is so important to brand association?
Something visual is really, design is your first language.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at something before you read it. So the consistency that a brand holds, and when you come across that brand in different places, whether it's walking through a branch or going to the website, or even going to the a call center, there's a sense of the personality. So that visual reference just keeps beating the drum, and building that consistency across the board, so that whether you're in the branch feeling the soft skills that are going on there, where you're greeted at the door, and all the different things that make you feel comfortable, that same feeling can be had on the website, making sure that you're following that same feeling, that same vibe as you go from one platform to the next. It is your hometown team, as I said. So it's as if you are going into a stadium of your popular team, and you see the logo here in the there's colors within the stadium. Then you go to concession and you can see it on the cups. Everything feels like, oh, I'm in the right place. This is my place. There's a sense of pride and ownership there. So that's, brand in general across the board, that's what it is. It's really holding on to you and not letting go, so that you keep coming back and you don't grow tired. So brands go through somewhat of an evolution through messaging to make sure that people are engaged continually as their lives change. But it's really important to just kind of hold on to them, with that consistent theme.
And I think that question sort of funnels into this one as well, but personalization becomes a way to live out your brand promise in real time. You've both sort of mentioned empathy and connection, and what might that look like digitally on your website?
Yeah. Again, I think there's an emotional tie when you make a commitment to a brand, to a bank brand or whatever it might be. you've done your part. You either purchased it or you walked in the door, you started the conversation, and the brand on the other side, the people on the other side, they need to understand you. Empathy is really important. That's how you build trust. That's how you build loyalty. It's not cold, when you start a relationship. It's something warm and inviting. And that's, what I know financial institutions, they want to have those conversations, but they can't have them all the time. I mean, they're not going to have the face-to-face conversation. So your website, billboards, whatever you're doing out there, radio, digital, it has to maintain that connection, so that when you do have that conversation again, it's a reminder that, like, wow, there's a consistent thing going on here. It's giving me a hug wherever I go, and I'm not going anywhere, because I've built that trust with that, with that institution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the core of it, your brand is how you relate to customers. So that's how you relate, how you listen to them, and really delivering on the brand promise. That trust is earned by consistently putting the customer first. So digitally on a website, that's hard to do when your website's a one-size-fits-all. Really delivering on the needs of that specific customer, putting them first. In the past, you're trying to, maybe the best you can, but you're really doing something that's going to work for all your customers. You're not really doing something that's fit for the specific customer coming to your website. And that's something where the brand has to be large enough to fill all that, but then a brand also has to be able to speak to each individual user and resonate with them. And so that's where personalization really is an effective tool on a website. You can speak directly to the person. You can really connect to them relationship-wise and earn their trust by putting them first, putting their needs up front and center when they go to the website.
Absolutely. And how might personalization work on a bank website?
So one of the biggest challenges that banks have is their audiences are so diverse. So a bank has to serve a 20-year-old just in college or just getting out of college. It has to serve a 90-year-old who's looking at trusts and estates and things like that, and everything in between: commercial people, residential, urban, suburban, all these people, all these different diverse segments. That's a very difficult challenge. On a website, personalization is a great way to address that, the biggest challenge that banks have on a website. As an example, I'm just going to talk through a couple personas of just kind of typical customers you might have. This is going to be shared afterward. It's going to be available for you to see these personas in PDF format. But just to talk through them real quick. So let's take the first persona. We'll call her Emily Parker. And she's age 34. She's a marketing manager. She lives in the suburbs. She has a young family and is a new homeowner. Her banking profile is maybe a long-term checking savings user. She recently refinanced a mortgage. She usually uses her phone to browse, visits the website for convenience and advice. Her goals are going to be things like manage her day-to-day finances, get financial guidance on saving for her kids' education, those types of things. The challenges she faces on the website are feeling overwhelmed by financial jargon or complex tools, not knowing what services are available to her, kind of the benefits of those things. Maybe her loyalty to the community bank expects digital experience that rivals those bigger regional banks or national banks. So what would you do for personalization for her? So just as an example, we'll take the homepage. Maybe the homepage on the banner, you might personalize it and say, planning for your family's future, explore our savings options for parents. That's something that's going to speak directly to where she is in her life stages. She's got to feel understood as a parent, not just a customer, something that really resonates with her more. Maybe on the content on that homepage, you might have some blog posts and videos on budgeting for families or saving for college. Maybe some of the products that you might be showing on that homepage or throughout the site might be home equity lines, family-focused credit cards, things like that. Tone and visuals are going to be more warm, probably community-focused, approachable copy on that. So that's one persona. let's take a very different persona and kind of see how would we market to that on the same website. So the second persona, we'll call him Marcus, is age 48. He's the owner of a local contracting business. He's kind of in the city. He's an established professional. His business is rapidly growing. He uses desktop computer during work hours, visits the site for tools, that kind of thing. His goals are to streamline cash flow management between personal and business accounts, access financing options, look for a bank that can grow with a small business. Some of his challenges, he finds it frustrating when consumer and business banking experiences feel disconnected. He doesn't have a lot of time to dig through the site, doesn't want to talk to a lot of different departments for simple needs. So how we're going to personalize for him. So on the homepage, we might show, on the feature, we might show business banking tools and commercial lending insights on the feature. In the content, we might have articles that are blog articles like three smart ways to manage seasonal cash flow, something that's going to resonate a lot more with a business owner. The navigations probably have something that's streamlined to business services, maybe equipment loans on there. And the tone and visuals are probably going to be more direct, more professional, not as community focused, but more business focused, and something that's going to convey like competence in the services that they have available. We'll send those out later, or we'll have those available later in some format, but that's an example of how you take two distinct customers who are very different, live in different locations, have different lives and different life stages, and market to them on the same website through personalization.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And with those two personas, how might you define success through the use of personalization? How might you know that it's actually working on your website?
There's a number of things that you'd want to measure success by. I think the number one is that it has to have a clear goal. So any personalization that you do, you're going to want to have a goal for that personalization. You're not just going to want to do it just for the fun of it. Some examples of goals you might have. We talked about business customers. You might want to share, one of your goals might be to share frequently needed tools and services with them. That's not something that they're going to get in the normal website view, maybe, but you want to share that specifically for them. Another goal might be to include more relational language for college students. So we all know that the generations speak differently about products, they bank differently. Being able to talk to them specifically might be a goal when you're trying to reach that younger demographic. Another one, when you're entering new markets, you might want to show community support in those markets. So you might be personalizing based on location of new markets you're entering, really showing some community-based things that you're doing in that area, so you can really kind of get their trust a little bit more and show that you're part of the community in the location that they're at. A couple more things on judging the success of it. It should be measurable. I mean, having a goal is great, but having a measurable goal is something that is ideal, both for the customer, but also for your own sake, for a return on investment, for being able to prove that this is actually working, it's worth their time investment. One of the other successes of personalization, it really should be a mix of empathy, context, and timing. So you hear that in sales a lot, that you want to offer someone the right product at the right time. A website's the same, like you want to have that empathy and you want to have the right context and the right timing that you're displaying things to a user. So if they're in a life stage where they are looking at mortgages, you want to be empathetic to that struggle that buying a mortgage or buying a house is a really big deal. It can be a struggle for a lot of people. There's a lot of emotions involved. You want to have the right context that that's what they're doing. You want to have the right timing. You don't want to be showing them the things about mortgages 2 years after they bought a house. So those are the types of things that personalization should do as well.
So to sort of round things out here, how does the in-branch experience tie into digital personalization?
I can kick this off. I'm sure, Matt, you'll have more technical things to provide. Being from the kind of the brand touchy-feely side, I feel that if you think about walking into a branch and building that relationship with a person or just with the environment, like I go there, there's a sense of energy that happens, right? You sort of, there's a spatial thing between you and a person. And a feeling and an emotion that you leave with. I was satisfied with the service. They were good people. They're really strong. In what they do, they have great products, and you start building that rapport with the brand, but certainly with the person, but certainly with the brand too, because there's a positive feeling. When you go to a website, or if you see other parts of the brand, that energy follows you. It's an expectation that, okay, I remembered that, what I felt in the branch. So now I get to carry that with me to the website. So now that distance or that energy isn't about distance. It's really about the emotional connection. It's not the physical distance. So the personalization, that you form on the website, and, knowing them, and meeting their expectations, and making sure that it's consistent across the brand with what the messaging is. They feel a sense of pride, as I've said before, but they also feel like, hey, I'm proud of where I'm at. Like, this service is great. And wherever I go, I'm just feeling that consistent love across the brand. So I feel that the connection is there, but it's always about that little energy force that's between you and the brand, making sure that you're keeping that, close to their heart. That's my touchy-feely little piece there. Matt, you can clean it up with some real data.
Some hard technical facts. But, no, I mean, this has been a pretty high-level conversation that we've had, but one thing that's important with personalization is it works best when that data comes from all different sources. So being able to capture that data in branch, being able to capture what products they're interested in, what products they looked at, services, things like that, being able to feed that into a CRM or another tool and be able to use that on the website for personalization, really holistically knowing about the customer and being able to use information about the customer in smart ways across all your channels is very important. So really that in-branch experience shouldn't be too much different from your website experience. Like, when you go into a branch, like Paul said, some of the benefits of that, they're going to answer your questions directly. They're going to speak toward the customer situation. You can interpret the meaning behind their questions that a customer gives. You can chat about local news, things like that. That's really more community-based. There's really no reason your website can't do that either. It should be a really unified experience between your branch and your website. You should be able to do those things on your website as well, and answer questions directly, and give them local events. Make them feel like they're in a community when they go to your website. So it's really something that shouldn't be separate as it is. We kind of picture those two things as different experiences, but really I think the goal is to have the same experience no matter where they are, in your branch or online. And that's really ties into what Paul talking about brand, that should be consistent across all channels.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. Before we kind of close things out, I did just kind of want to open things up for questions. Anybody had any questions from the audience? Looks like we do have one. Somebody has asked, how does GDPR and other data privacy laws affect personalization on a website? I think, Matt, that is your alley.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Oh, I was all over that one.
Yeah, I was waiting for Paul to answer that. No. So, I mean, these data privacy laws can be complicated. Personalization definitely falls into those in some ways. So there's a couple things kind of entailed in that. There is a lot of personalization you can do without consents. So things like location-based, things that are in session on a website view. So what they do in that session, you can personalize based on that. Personalization is considered data transfer. So when you are doing things based on previous visits or core data that you have on the person, that has to follow these privacy acts. So whether it's GDPR, where it requires an opt-in, or whether it's CCPA or something more in the States where it's usually an opt-out, like you can do this until they opt out. That's something to be aware of. Definitely something to consider when you're looking at these things. Also knowing if you are marketing to people in Europe, not just if you have customers there, but if you're marketing to them. These are all things that tie into the requirements for that. But it's definitely something that isn't going anywhere, these data protection acts, and it is something that needs to be addressed on your site. It's good practice, even if you're not doing personalization, to kind of have those cookie policies and consents in place on your website.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
We do have a couple more questions here. Paul, this one I think is perfect for you. Is there a certain time frame for when a brand should be refreshed or redeveloped?
The brand or a website?
The brand, yes.
The brand itself. I've been asked this question before, and I think the bank representatives kind of know it. I think they can feel it. You can tell if a brand is tired. It's not saying much, or it's not connecting with their customer base. You can just sort of feel it. If we're going in there and doing an assessment, and you start asking questions, doing a discovery, you can see that there's a disconnect, that the gap between what they think they are and what their brand actually is too big, and it needs to be kind of pulled in, or that what their general brand expression is when you walk into the branch, who they are, what their personality isn't represented, on their website or in their marketing materials. So it shows itself, and then you also, you have to recommend the next move, which is the hard part, because it takes investment of time and money, of course, to kind of go out there and do some fresh messaging and maybe design and all the things that go along with it.
We have another one here, I think, for you, Matt, primarily. For an organization that hasn't started with personalization, where is the best place to start if there's not organizational goal, audience segmentation or persona building, data, content development? Where might be a good place to start, in your opinion?
They kind of answer the questions themselves a little bit. Really, before you can do successful personalization, you have to understand your customer base a little bit. So probably the first step is understanding your challenges and kind of the difficulties that your customers have with your website. That might be that you're in 3 different states and they all have very different cultures. Maybe you have a disconnect between your young users and your old users, and they are trying to use your website in different ways and have a struggle with that. Really answering those questions is the first step to it. In practice, personalization, we always kind of recommend a crawl, walk, run method for it. So don't try to personalize the whole site in one go, and really start with just a couple personas. Start with a couple really troublesome personas that you're having a hard time marketing to on the website. Start doing things for them. Just thinking, if you were that user, what would be a benefit on the website? And just work that way. Work from user intention and not from the technical aspect. Always start with the user and how you can make things better for them, and then work backwards to the technology and things like that.
I don't think we have any more questions here. So to kind of round things out, could you guys maybe leave the audience with one piece of closing information that you could kind of leave them with?
Sure.
I'll go, Matt, just because you were the last to speak.
Okay.
I would just, remember that, your website is your brand in kind of real time, in action. If, your customers are going there on a regular basis, it's a constant experience. So that personalization is obviously huge. And as Matt mentioned earlier, you make a promise as a brand, and that consistent, promise needs to be, throughout everything that you do, so that you can feel good about it. I tend to equate it to, having your favorite place to get coffee, or a coffee shop, and they just know you. It's, they know how to make your coffee. They might make it before you even ask for it, and that's a good feeling. And you stick to a place like that. And not that there's going to be mistakes on the website, or there's anything bad that can happen, but there is a little bit of wiggle room when you create that, that connection. You can have a conversation. You don't have to be so perfect, but the connection is so important that you start looking at all the bright parts of that brand. So I would say, just look at your bank brand or your credit union brand like a coffee shop, and and just be consistent and be smart with everything that you do.
Yeah, I think mine would be very similar to Paul's. I would say meet the customer where they're at. It's kind of a cliche in a little bit, but really they expect and deserve to be treated as an individual on your website in 2025. It's no longer how it was a few years ago, where they're accustomed to a one-size-fit-all, and they're used to it, and they don't have problems looking for information specifically for them. Your website should be catered to the individual now. It should make them feel like the website was built for them. Start small if you have to, but that should be your goal, really meet the customer where they're at.
Well, I just want to thank you both very much for joining us today. Want to thank our audience for joining us and the Financial Brand for hosting. I also want to note that if anybody has any follow-up questions, might want to continue the conversation or get in touch with any one of us, please visit us at pannosmarketing.com or shoot one of us an email. Our emails are the first letter of our first name, last name at pannosmarketing.com, and we certainly hope to catch you next time. So thank you guys so much.